Hi, and welcome to Our Ventura. I'm your guest host, Yvette Araujo, and I'm here today with musical director Daniel Cook from Adolfo Camarillo High School. Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
I'm going to jump right into music because music is my passion. And I was quite disturbed for a couple decades now. There has been the back and forth of removing music from a lot of our public school systems and private school systems as a way of budget cutting, and it just absolutely broke my heart. How does that affect you as a music director?
It's something that we always worry about, so I think always in the back of our minds. 10, 12 years ago, it was really common for music programs to be cut, and people in the arts in general, not just music, all different type of art classes and creativity classes essentially. So as artists coming in with that music background, frankly, a lot of people go into it. I always went in with an education in mind, but many go into it because it's a secure job, and they have a passion for it and they want to share it with students, and to see something you're so passionate about to be kind of used as a pawn in budget cuts is always something we worry about. It's always something we do talk about, even with students. When something, when money does come in, we're overly excited about it, almost like it's because it's so still not normal for us to be funded.
Absolutely. So when this happened, I noticed that a lot of well-known musicians and artists, they got on board, and there was a huge campaign, Save the Music, campaigns going on in wanting the music to be restored in the school place. Did that help in its resurgence coming back into play in schools?
I think so. I think anytime you have people with a microphone and people with a voice and people with a platform and a following, that you're going to get change. And I think you see that even now with artists and athletes and anyone using a platform, with social media and all the different things out there to get your voice across. But yeah, there's a lot of, the Grammy Foundation does a lot more outreach, I think, than they used to. And there's a lot more outreach. And the unfortunate part of that, the negative with that good, is that some school districts have been spoiled by some of this outreach. And then the money comes in, and then they don't remember that they have to fund it after that money stops.
Yeah. So,
it's a problem.
It gets lost, or a cog in the wheel type of thing.
Yeah.
So my next question to you is because as we have moved so much into the technological age, and the raw music and some of the most classic, from the most classical to the grassroots, such as Elvis or James Brown, and all of these really profound musicians that are the staple of what these kids are doing now. But it seems to be a way that kids are communicating through their music. Stories are told, and it's bringing together a lot of cultural diversity. A lot of social economic classes are coming together, and you see a lot of that happening, blending of the different genres of music. How does that work in your classes?
Well, something that we're doing right now that we're really excited about is a cross-curricular project with the English department, and it's about civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement, specifically using Rosa Parks and the actions she had, and some of the domino effect that started a lot of the civil rights movement. And it's a piece by Mark Camphouse, a composer, a collegiate professor in Illinois, and he wrote a piece called A Movement for Rosa. And it's talking about the civil rights movement, but it's also a piece that he wrote that shows not just the beginning of the movement, the civil rights movement, that singular voice, and then this middle section that's really impactful, a lot of just energy and strife and conflict, and then a bit more of a resolution, but not complete resolution. And it's something that we're able to sit there and pull out parts of music and say, what does this represent historically? What does this represent now? What does this represent to you? What does this represent? Because I have students from very diverse cultural background, and they're able to connect it with any part of their own family history, whether it be American history or not. And so music is used as a tool in our classroom to talk about all subjects.
Did you find when you were putting together this particular piece, Rosa Parks, did most of your students, did they know about what this great icon did, being the first African-American woman who wouldn't, take a seat in the back of the bus. Did they know
they,
that story?
They did know the story. The extent of it, I don't know how much they got in depth in their classes. They do study. We study it in California history classes. You're actually studying it 2 or 3 times by the time you get to high school. Okay. But I think that there's a certain amount of fatigue on students that without bringing in this case, the music side, I don't think that they were really absorbing it like they could. And I think that's what was so exciting about this. But I think with recent events and like the movie Selma being made and Senator Lewis, some of the stories that have come out and being revisited about his past in the civil rights movement and as being an activist, that some of it's actually a little bit more recognized by students, but it's just they know this piece and this piece. And the music has actually allowed us to bring all of that together and then also apply it to something else that they might have more comfort with.
Absolutely, and so that is another tool of getting them excited about understanding it even more, that it's just not old news, but it is something that was, is, and should always be striving for is diversity and accepting of cultures, and even where music is concerned, from classical to rock, to hip hop. And
we're able to through the music, we're able to have comforting conversations where we're able to find, this common ground of how it applies to them and how it's important. We're able to kind of push them to dig deeper in music, in all music they listen to, and also go find some music maybe they're not comfortable with and spend some time with it and maybe realize what it's from and why. There's a lot of tools that music has allowed us to talk about, and because it's a music program and music students are there for longer hours and they're there for not just 1 year and then they go to the next, they're there that whole time at that specific campus. So we're able to get a little more comfortable with each other and have a little more frank of conversations. And I think that we've been really fortunate through this unit and through music in general to be able to have conversations about all sorts of different topics, but because of some of the climate of the recent election, and it's been a kind of a good place to kind of just pour emotion out, whether they're verbally communicating, but to actually have that emotional experience through the music. Absolutely. It's like a release, I think, in a lot of ways for a lot of the students.
How do you think what they are doing now, and then moving forward, like you said, for 4 years, you have them, on campus doing this, and I would dare say that a lot of them are there because they really want to be there and they want to know the core of music. Where do you think this is going to take them in life? Do they speak about where this influences them, or does it open them up to be human, rights activists? Does it open them up to be musicians or artists? Does it give them a platform? How does it affect their future,
I don't think I think it's too early to know, and a lot of the actions that we make as teachers and a lot of the lessons we teach as teachers is for something down the line, and 3, 4, 5, 10, 50. I feel like I'm still, something happens to me now, and I look back at some of my professors and teachers and go, I'm really glad that I had some time to dig in on that. I had a teacher that went off of the script, essentially, of our class and teach us about South African apartheid. And that unit was so powerful and so connected to so much of just the progress of social injustice and changing that over time. And I think that even what's happening now, I think back to that lesson.
Absolutely.
And so with our students now, we do have students that are more engaged, I think, politically. I think we definitely have students that are really active. I have several students in GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, which is a group on campus, a club on campus, and I have a lot of students that are on in the club Link, which is Liberty in North Korea, when they fundraise money for helping people that get out of the situation in North Korea. So these are, they existed, I feel like, when I was in school, and when maybe even when my parents might have been in school, but the level of interest, the level of knowledge that the general population of students seems to have, I think is more in depth, and maybe that's because of media and access to information is different.
Right.
But I think they are getting more engaged. I think, some of them are even picking colleges based on what kind of society that school is. I have a student that picked Portland State,
Right.
you know, because of the progressive ideas of that city.
Okay.
You know, so I think that maybe that's something they would have already done, but I think they're talking about it more, and it's more
It's
on
engaging.
it's in the forefront of their mind, I think, maybe more than it had been in the past.
Exactly. So it's stimulating a lot more conversation,
Yeah.
and which is good.
That's what we want.
Because when they're at this age, they don't tend to talk a lot. So.
No, and I tell parents all the time, they're not always talking at home, and I always tell them, you know, you need to go home and ask more from your parents, and tell your parents more than ask them what's for dinner.
Absolutely.
Like, have these conversations, go have this conversation that we just had here. And going into the election, I've asked students, you know, I beg of you to be independent thinkers.
Absolutely.
And have engaging discussions. And I have an open office, you know, open door policy. A lot of teachers on campus have an open door policy with this specific subject. And the conversation is what we want. We don't want them to make up their mind on anything.
Right.
But we want them to think. And
Yes.
music makes students think.
Yes, it does.
And some of the things that we've been able to do in music, even in this last year and a half, just to bring up different subjects and bring up different parts of history, and just to make them think.
Aware.
And awareness is so much of it. We don't want it to just be, this is here, this is matter of fact, and that's it. And so much of this piece specifically is interpretation too. So allowing them to also give me their thoughts. And I already have my mind made up of maybe what this part is or that part is. You know, when we study jazz and we go through all the history of jazz, and the history of jazz is very in line with the social progress of our country and even the technological advances of our country. And so it's all just a conversation starter.
Right.
And I hope it makes them hungry to go dig in more and
Well, it sounds
deeper.
like you yourself is very passionate, and so that becomes very contagious, especially for, you know, those who think that, oh, well, you know, music, that's kind of like a nerdy thing to do, but you seem to make it very, very a cool thing to do, and a nice platform where they can come out to do just that. And if I can ask you, let's say 7 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, what would be the proudest thing that a past student could say to you in whatever genre they picked for career, if they came back to you and say, what would you like to have accomplished?
I'll be honest, I tell students all the time, I don't expect you to go major in music. I honestly don't want you to go major in music. Music ed is a great path, music education, and music technology and music industry. There's very few colleges that offer something like that. But going out and making a difference and having a fulfilling job, because I have a fulfilling job and I get to go in and have these passionate discussions. And some days we get to talk about history, and I have a history degree, so like that's really exciting for me. And some days it's really hard work, and it's just kind of like going over the same, 30 seconds of music over and over again. But every day I feel like they're making a difference.
Right.
And I hope that and I communicate that with them, and I want them to see that a job isn't it doesn't have to feel like work.
Exactly.
You should go find something that you're passionate about. And I've had former students that are, lawyers or have, even done internships with congressmen.
Oh my gosh.
And I've done all different things. And I just want them to feel fulfilled.
So you're part of that part of that human condition, and I think that's something you should be proud of, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that's wonderful. So anyways, if somebody wanted to understand the programs and some of the shows that you put on, how would they get a hold of you?
We have a great parent group that just recently redid our website.
Okay.
So www.achsmusic.com. And our website has our calendar, it has upcoming fundraisers and events. And it's a pretty diverse program, 13, 14 performing ensembles throughout the year.
Okay.
And, approaching 200 students on our campus. So we have fun fundraisers that are no kids involved, golf tournaments and beer and wine tasting, and a lot of fun stuff. And then we put on traditional concerts, which
is wonderful.
So we have a lot of stuff going on all year round, and we stay busy with all different styles of music and everything. And this is actually our first year of having year-round jazz in many years. So
wonderful.
So there's a lot of more upbeat and more accessible music for a lot of people to go enjoy.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing with our viewers how you contribute music and historic and all the wonderful things that education can bring to the community, because that's always a great thing. And we have a lot of millennials and the children, and that's going to take us into the new century.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today on Our Ventura TV. I'm your guest host, Yvette Araujo, and I look to see you next time. Thanks.